So I'm from Ossington Old Orchard Public School, which is a downtown school here in Toronto. We're a tiny school, well, tiny for Toronto standards, but we only have 320 kids, 30 staff. I'm the teacher librarian there, and I teach core French as well. I know all of the kids, and I know a lot of the parents. I have a lot of names wrapped up in my head over the years. But it's an honor to have that role at the school, just because I get to know the families as they go through the school. We're a K to 6 school, so I see the kids all the way from K all the way to 6, which really does bode well for the guilt factor when they're kind of acting like punks in grade 6, and I say, I've known you since you were 4. Don't try to pull that out. But I do a lot of garden work with the kids. I'm sorry that the slides are actually off a little bit on here. Sorry about that. I got started with the garden years ago with many of my colleagues. I work with a really strong team of teachers and parents and friends. And we developed a food garden. We've always had a green space in the school. We were one of the first green spaces in Toronto almost 30 years ago with the David Suzuki Foundation in Evergreen. We were really lucky because we had a concrete jungle in our schoolyard, and then 30 years ago got it as a tiered garden. It was mostly perennials and flowers, but we really wanted to turn it into a food garden. And so it was a whole team of people that were involved in that process. Years ago, when I was watching a documentary with Jamie Oliver, he once said that he's never met a kid who hasn't eaten what they grew. And I thought, okay, I'm going to try that. I'm going to test that out. And I test that out all the time, and it is true. Each and every time, I have kids who eat kale. And this is a true story. I've had countless parents actually come up to me in the schoolyard or after school and just tell me, like, what did you do to get my kid to eat kale? They added kale to the grocery list because they wanted to make kale smoothies or kale chips or kale whatever that we made that at school. And one kid who had never eaten kale in his life absolutely insisted that his mom get kale at the grocery store, and they made kale chips, and he ate almost an entire head of kale to himself, and his mom was like, I have no idea what you did, but that was magic, because that was incredible. And I mean, it's the same thing, my own kids will eat it too. I mean, it's different. If they do it at school, they'll eat it at school. If it's my own kids, it's a different experience too. But we've had so many kids just come back and give me the recipes that they've made. I've had kids bring their own creations that they've made at home in a little Tupperware container with either a soup or a smoothie or chips, and it's such an honor to have the kids be then part of the home school connect is really incredible. But the most important factor is the parent factor. I'm a parent myself, and I know how difficult it can be to volunteer. I can't volunteer during the day because I'm at school. But this wouldn't happen without parents. It really, truly would not happen without parents. And it doesn't have to be during the day, because most parents can't volunteer during the day. They're at their own respective workplaces. But it's the nighttime things, or it's the weekend things, where they're going to Home Depot and they're building signs. This was made by a stellar parent, Andy Curtis, who's no longer at our school because her kids have graduated, but she's an author of kids' food books, and her father, so the student's grandfather, made this sign. And this is our community post. And so parents would come on the weekends to do either weeding or watering or building trellises. So parents that we wouldn't necessarily get to see at drop-off or pick-up, or even parent-teacher interviews, because they may have night shifts, but they can build things, or they can go shopping for us. And it's not necessarily things that would cost money. It takes time, and it's things that we can't do during the day with students. This is just one example of what the school garden has done in terms of the community. That it's brought the community together, and that age-old saying of a family that eats together stays together. And I feel that's really true with our school community too. We've had a variety of different harvest festivals over the years, celebrating our garden. So that top picture over there, that's our school yard, and behind that is the tiered garden. We have 2 tiers, and then that actually goes into an L shape. So it's a really large garden at this point. We've expanded the space. And that top left picture is a community potluck evening harvest party. And it was magical. It was outdoors, the weather was great, it was really chilly, but we had parent bands. I teach downtown, so there are a lot of hipster bands that are parents that come to the school, so they played. It was a really lovely feel to it. That was the potluck empty bowls. But those are actually dishes that I made with my students in the class, in my French classroom. So they're all empty. There were different hummuses and pestos and celery sticks. But the lovely thing about our garden is that it really has provided a community hub. And things happen in the garden that we don't plan. They just naturally happen on their own. And parents will come and then just have impromptu get-togethers and like parties, for lack of a better word, in the garden on the weekend, and they'll just naturally tend to the garden on their own, which is great. Parents and their kids will show up on the weekends and then do gardening. And then the really nice thing now is that kids and their parents are taking ownership of the watering, and I don't have to necessarily set up a schedule, or my colleagues don't have to set up a schedule for watering or tending. In the morning I might set up a water bucket, and I'll fill up the water bucket and then throw in 10 or 15 watering cans, and then by 9 o'clock the entire garden is watered. And it just happens. And then kids will do it at recess time, and they'll teach each other how to do it. And it's inspired the school to have the garden be a part of the school focus and the community focus, to the point where 3 weeks ago we had a magical pumpkin patch. I don't know if you can see that back there, but there were 325 pumpkins that we placed in the schoolyard at 6:30 in the morning. A parent who works at Food Share and arranged to have 320 pumpkins purchased. So the school council purchased these pumpkins, and then about 30 of us showed up at 6:30 with the truck, and then just delivered all these pumpkins, and the kids were just inspired. And they thought it was magical. We all thought it was magical. But that's what a garden can do. It can inspire people to do magical things like this. And we ended up doing pumpkin everything for the week after that. So every kid went home with a pumpkin, and then we had enough pumpkins for to last a long time. The pumpkins were a little bit bigger than we expected, but we made pumpkin soup, we made roasted pumpkin seeds, we made roasted pumpkin, we did pumpkin writing, we did pumpkin everything. And the pumpkin everything also extended to multi-age grouping activities. So we have school-wide buddies that kind of carry throughout the years. And so the older kids will work with the kindergarten kids throughout the entire year. They'll have the same buddy, the same partner throughout the whole year. And it's beyond reading. It's reading, it's writing, but it's also cooking and planning and planting together. And it's really a beautiful relationship to watch blossom, because the grade 6s will then come out of themselves and really kind of put their testing behavior aside and really step up and be really good role models for the younger students. And it's really nice to see them get together and then go and monitor their plants throughout the school year, or monitor their planning process throughout the school year. again, sorry about the arrangement there, but I also teach core French, which are there any core French teachers in the room? Core French can be painful to teach sometimes, and it does have a reputation of being a very painful subject too, but I've tried to make it interesting by incorporating food, because who doesn't like food? I would hope that everybody would love food. And so I've tried to make the French, the core French program be authentic. And the nice thing about the new French curriculum, new, you know, it's 3 or 4 years old, is that it actually, in the curriculum, so just as Sunday had mentioned it, curriculum is policy. The French curriculum does actually state that you can teach French through the environment, not teaching about the environment, but through. And I love the fact that that is actually incorporated in the curriculum, and it is a policy that we can work with. And so I've tried to then just teach a lot of my program through food, through health, through just through using the garden. We use the garden also for meditation, to just lower our anxiety levels with students, and so we just do some calming exercises in the garden on a regular basis. We make soup, we do math and planning in the garden with square foot gardening. We do cooking challenges where students have to test out different recipes and then taste the differences. We plan and make our own pots with newspaper, origami. We make smoothies and pesto, and then we just eat straight from the garden and raw, and I find that that's the most successful. And then that lends itself to, I feel, more authentic assessment too, and more real assessment, because then you can get kids talking about food in a more real way. So they'll make visual recipes. So this is la soupe à la citrouille, which we just made a few weeks ago. And it was really good. It was curry coconut soup, which I thought was so, and most of the kids kind of rolled their noses up at that. They're like, is it going to be spicy? Yeah, it's not going to be spicy, it's going to be mild. And it was good for allergies too, because it didn't have any dairy. But I was really impressed with the recipes that they made too. I find that they're just a little bit more connected to the real life. And then it's just incorporated in the library. So this is the library, and we have French words, and they're all related to food. And this is just a visual of what the volunteers can do in the evenings and on the weekends. So we have artwork that volunteers made on the weekends, so beautiful artwork that I wouldn't have time to do at all, and I don't have the skills to do it. And parents can set up watering cans, they can help set up plants, there are so many jobs that we desperately need help with. And I'll end off with the mystery bites. So it's always been a challenge to see if eating raw food will succeed. And I found that if we just kind of test out different bites together, students will then challenge each other to see, okay, well, let's try this. And so these are nasturtium flowers and kale, and then they have come back for seconds and thirds and fourths, and that's, I think, really great.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Round of applause.